Hey guys, and welcome to the Creating a Game series part 2. Today we will actually start creating our basic level. So you can see here, here's what we're going to cover in this video. We will be creating a brand new level from scratch and putting all of the basic components that you should have. We will be adding our first simple track and attaching the player to the track. We will add some basic moving obstacles so we can see how that blueprint works. We will be adding some mines so that they can do damage to us. We will be adding a checkpoint and a pickup. So again, we can see how those systems work. And then we will end it by making sure that we test that we can take damage, that we can grab the health pickup or the points, what happens when we die, and what happens when we respawn. So let's go ahead and jump to Unreal. And we're going to keep these videos pretty simple and brief. I'm not going to spend too much time on every single setting. We're just going to go for the basics here. And then I can always address questions later. So this is exactly where we left off on the previous video. We're going to go ahead and go to File, New Level, and let's just go ahead and create a default level. And let's go ahead and save this. Put it on the Maps folder, and we're going to call it Level Tutorial. Okay, click Save. All right, so first thing I like to do is organize a few things here. So let's grab the light source, the skybox, and this, and move it to a new folder. I'm gonna call it Components. You don't have to do this, but I just like doing that to keep things organized. We grab the floor. Let's scale this up. Let's make it really long. Maybe a 50 here. So clearly, very long level here. And now let us grab the player start. Let's move it all the way to the back here. Yep. We can move this a little bit higher here. And the player will start here. Now, let's go ahead and click Save. Now, if all you do is click Play, click Default Player, you'll notice that as you move around, the camera seems to be fixed, right? So this isn't really what you were expecting. And the reason for that is because we need to add the fixed camera actor. So go ahead and grab this and just dump it on your level. Doesn't really matter where. And we're going to create another folder. I'm going to put these two things here. Let's just call this player. And this is really the default camera actor. So now if you click play, you'll see that now it looks a lot more like what you would expect. This is because the camera is a separate blueprint actor that's actually keeping track of the player. All right. So let's go ahead and add a skylight. Usually a good idea. Let's put it under the components folder. And let's put, well, actually, we'll just leave it at that. We'll add post-process later on. It's not really needed right now. So if we go back here to our handy list, I think we've set up some of the basic components. Let's go ahead and add a track. So go to Actors, Tracks, and drop BP track on your level. And you'll notice that as soon as I do that, there's a few things that are here. I'm going to put it as close to the player start as possible. You can see the player start is right there. And this is going to be the track that the player gets immediately attached to. This is the on-rails portion of the track. So you'll notice that it has a number 0 here and a 1. These are the spline points. So go ahead and grab the actual spline point, drag it out. Zoom out a little bit more. And if you hit Alt as you're dragging, you'll notice that you can create more spline points. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you ever want to curve this track, then that's how you would do it. So let's just go ahead for now and just create a very simple straight track. That's it. And you'll notice there's a couple of options here. If you look under the properties panel, there's a track speed, and we're going to leave that as default. It's kind of arbitrary, but 20 is the default for the For the template, you can make that really fast. You can make it 100 and it'll go really fast. You can make it 5 and it'll go super slow. 20 is the speed that I've determined to be kind of the average. This is, I believe, on Corneria you have a 25, so slightly faster when you begin, but let's just leave it at that. And then the spline point types are curves. So between each spline point, you have the option of making it either a curve, linear, or constant. The default is curved. I wouldn't really touch that right now. Let's go ahead and let's do something real quick. Let's go ahead and click Edit VP Track and go to the construction script. And we will be going to the spline mesh component and we will make this visible. And the reason for that, so go ahead and go to rendering, hidden in game, and uncheck hidden in game. And we're going to do this just for testing purposes. In reality, when you're playing the game, you don't want to see the actual track. This, and you can see this semi-transparent material, its only purpose is to give you a sense of where the player will be going, so you can line up all of your background elements, right? So if your track is this wide, you know that everything else in the level the player will not be able to go to, so you can put anything you want, right? Buildings, enemies, whatever, right? This is just a guiding visual guide for you. So right now, if I click play, nothing happens, even though I can see that I'm kind of inside the track, and that's because we need to assign the player to the track. So go ahead and go to VP Assign Track, drag it out, and we're gonna go ahead and put it here. And you'll notice that the first thing that is asking you here on the properties panel, we're gonna get this real close here, is going to be which track, send the player to which track. And click here and select VP track, which is just this track. Remember, you can have more than one track on your level, and this is why you do it like that. So you can have a little event called event align to track, and if you click here, you'll notice that we just align perfectly to the first spline point on the track. So if you put this somewhere else and you're having a hard time aligning it, go ahead and click on this utility and it'll automatically align it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and move it a little bit more far outside. And now the mode is going to be on active. We're going to take a look at different modes later on, but for now, this mode means that as soon as the player overlaps, the player will be assigned the track. Okay, so now what happens when you click, let's just go ahead and save everything. If you click play, notice that now the player is on the track, and as I'm moving up and down, notice that now I'm constrained to the track and the camera is now different. Right? That's how you know if you're really on the track or not. If you're in all range mode, then obviously the view is completely different. Okay, so now what have we accomplished? We've immediately start the game and the player is assigned to the track. Notice that there's a little jump, and that's because we're starting at this position in the middle of the track. So we want to go ahead and drive the player start to the same distance, or the same height rather, than the assigned track to make the transition as smooth as possible. You can see here that you didn't even notice, as soon as I click play, I'm already on the track, right? All right, now it's a little hard to tell kind of where we're going because it's such an empty level. So let's just grab a cube. And this, whoops, let's go to basic shapes here and grab a cube. And oh, okay. So before we do that, let's go back and make sure that we're using dynamic lighting so we don't have to keep rebuilding the light. So go back to the top here to light source, which was part of the initial level, and go to mobility and change it to movable. Notice that message goes away, and I would advise going dynamic lighting because you're going to have a lot of enemies moving around. You can't really bake lighting when you have a bunch of flying enemies, but obviously depending on your needs, if you want to bake your lighting, obviously go ahead and do that. So let's go to the cube that we just laid out, and let's just make this, oops, not 110 but 10, and let's make the Z something like 50 or maybe 20. And this really is just for us to orient ourselves and to see how fast we're going. It's more of a visual aid for the purposes of creating the level. And then we're going to grab all of the cubes. And we're going to duplicate them here. And let's offset them a little bit here. And now it's a lot easier to tell how fast we're going just by looking at this cube. This could be buildings, of course, but it just gives us an idea of kind of where we are. All right, great. So simple enough, took us just a few minutes. Now we have a track, and of course, as soon as the player goes to the end of the track, it'll go back to all range mode. So great. So now we have a simple track. And of course, we have a few settings that we can play around with. Let's go ahead and add a moving obstacle. So let's go back here and let's go to obstacles here under the actors folder. So blueprints, actors, obstacles, and let's just drop a BP simple obstacle. So we're just going to go ahead and drop this blueprint here. And you'll notice that if you go to the settings here, go under mesh, and let's go ahead and select a mesh, and let's say SM1 meter cube. So the mesh is simply a very simple cube. Let's scale the mesh here. Let's make it, say, 10 by 10 by 20. Let's make it a little bit thinner and thinner. So 5, 5, and maybe a 30 here. Okay, so now we have a very simple obstacle, and you'll see what I mean when I say obstacle. It's a moving object within the level that follows a pattern or rotates. Let's select some simple materials. So let's make this not a blue. Let's see here. Let's just type blue. All right, let's make it this simple color blue, which is one of the materials that comes with the blueprint. So let's put the obstacle here, and what happens right now if you just click play, and I'm just going to simulate so we can see what happens. You'll notice that automatically the obstacle is rotating on the z-axis, and that's because if you look at the options here, rotation, you can specify which axis it'll rotate. So by default, rotations are being used and are enabled, and you're rotating 50 units on the z-axis. So we don't want that. Let's make sure that we rotate instead on the x-axis. So let's make it 50, and now you have this obstacle rotating in the x-axis. To me, this seems a little bit cooler because now when the player is moving through the track, you'll have to try to avoid this obstacle. So that's as simple as it gets. Let's make sure that we have that we scale it a little bit more. Instead of 30, let's make this 40 to cover the entire track. You can see there. If we simulate, now we are actually covering the entire track. Okay, cool. And let's go ahead and duplicate this. So let's leave it at 50, which is the speed of rotation for X. Let's go ahead and duplicate, press Alt and drag it. But this time, this blueprint will be going a little bit faster. So let's make it 75. So when you click here, you'll notice now that the first obstacle is going at a rate of 50, but the second is going a lot faster. Okay, simple enough. So let's go ahead and play. And now we are on a track, and you have some obstacles. Try to avoid them, and you see as soon as you get hit, your shield starts being depleted, which is the green bar at the top. All right, simple enough. Let's make another obstacle that instead of rotating moves around. So let's go ahead and drag this obstacle again, and come into the options. We're actually going to disable rotation. So use rotation. We're not going to use rotation. and you can say rotations are not active. Either one. You disable the rotation. So now if we click on simulate, nothing happens. So we're going to have this actually move from side to side. And you see that on the old school games, you have like random obstacles. And of course, this could be any mesh, right? We're just going with a simple cube. So you could have debris moving around if you're in a space stage, or you can have vehicles or pretty much anything else. So let's go ahead and go down to movement. And we will say, by the way, there's other things here like the type of damage. We won't be looking at this now yet. We'll look at that later, just to keep things simple. We're going to activate the movement, and we're going to basically define what is the movement range of this blueprint. So let's say that we want the blueprint to move side to side like this. The first thing we do is we define the end location. So we grab the blueprint, move it all the way here. This is the end location, and then see here there's a boolean called capture end location. Make this true, and now you move this to the beginning location here. And now if I click on play and simulate, you'll see that the blueprint actually moves from side to side. It's as simple as that. It's basically recording the location, and it's using its current location at the beginning location and lerping between those two locations. And you have options, right? You can add a delay, so you has two movements, right? Moving forward, moving backwards, and we're using a timeline. So the timeline is 2 seconds. So if the timeline play rate is 1, meaning play at 100% speed, it'll take 2 seconds to go from the beginning to the end. If we would say play rate, let's make it a 5, in other words, 500% the play rate, and we click play, you'll see that it goes a lot faster. Now notice that it goes faster only on the forward movement, but not on the back movement, because the back play rate is still at 1. So you can customize. Do you want this to move constantly? Do you want it to move faster on one way and then go back to its resting place separately? You have the options here. You also have delays. So movement back delay means after it reaches its end, how long in seconds will it stay before it goes back? And the same thing for here. Movement start delay 1 second. Notice that when I click play, it takes about a second before it moves. If I make this 0 and I click play, it'll move immediately, wait a second, and then go back. Move immediately, wait a second, and then go back. If I were to go back here and say movement back delay 0, then notice that it's not waiting at all, right? So if you want something that is constantly moving, then you can go ahead and select it like that. So let's go ahead and leave it like this for now, but you can play around with those settings. So it swipes really quickly and then comes back a little bit slower. Let's go ahead and clone this and make it another one here. But this time we need to change again the location. So because we cloned this, if we just click play here, look what happens. The end location is exactly the same, and you may want that. See that? But we don't want that for this example. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on capture end location, disable it, and leave this as the end location, capture it again, and then move it all the way to the side. And what you have here is the opposite movement. There we go. But here for this one, we're going to do a little different. We're going to add a delay. So movement start delay, let's make it 1 second. Movement back delay 1 second, but we will make this faster. Let's make this, instead of a 5, let's make it an 8, and going back, let's make it an 8. So this is going to be a much more difficult obstacle, right? It'll wait 1 second and it'll move quickly. See how very quickly, just by changing a few variables here, you can make a ton of different obstacles. Right? And you don't have to leave it like that, obviously. You can take it even farther, right? What if I just clone this, put it here, And again, let's take out the capture location, make this the end location again, kind of to reset the vector, move it here, and you basically have yet again the same thing, right? Wait 1 second, wait 1 second. What if instead I also want to use rotation? You can definitely do that as well. So you can come back to rotation, activate the rotation, and let's make the X, let's make it 25. Now when you click play, you see that the obstacle is not only rotating, but moving as you specified. So you can play around with a bunch of different settings here to get the obstacle that you want. I'm actually going to not rotate on X. Let's rotate on Y. Let's see how that looks like if we just rotate on Y. Actually, that may be a little too hard. Let's not do that. I may actually get killed too quickly here. Let's just go ahead and rotate it like this, just for visual effect. So it's rotating on the yaw, but it's just going side to side. All right, cool. I think we spent enough time on the obstacles here. So if you just click play, you'll notice now that we have obstacles rotating at different rates. You can see here, you can brake or you can boost. There you go. Cool. All right. I think we should move on for the purposes of keeping the video brief. But these are some of the settings of creating your own obstacle. Let's go ahead and add mines. Okay, so let's go back to Unreal. And now we're going to actors, weapons, enemy weapons, VP mine. I'm going to drop a mine right here. And let's go ahead and put the first mine here. Let's focus on it. And I want to put it right in the center. So it's, the player has to move. And let's look at a couple of settings here. So if you type setup here on the right, you'll notice that there are several different things here. One is damage type, which I know we haven't talked about yet. Damage radius, explosion sound, and collision radius. So right now, we will go ahead and leave it as shield break, meaning that the damage that it'll do will actually break the player's shield. If the player's shield is already broken, then what happens is that the player takes damage. The damage radius is going to do radial damage. To what radius will damage be affected? And then the collision radius is what you see here is as soon as the player overlaps the sphere, then the mine will explode. So actually, the player doesn't have to collide with the mine, it has to be around it. Think about it as a proximity mine. So let's make this, I don't know, 1200, make it a little bit beefier. So the player really has to, well, let's make it 1000. A little bit smaller. And if the player goes near it, it'll actually lose its entire shield. So let's go ahead and duplicate this, and we're gonna put it here. And let's make another mine here. And now if we click play, let's go ahead and make sure we're in default. You'll see that we're now on the track. We're going around, trying to avoid the obstacles. And then if I hit the mine, notice that my shield is basically gone. And when I hit the mine yet again, what happened was that so some of my health was also gone. Okay, so we can do something else as well. Well, let's go ahead and leave it at that for now. Okay, so we've added the mines. Let's make sure now that we add a checkpoint. Let's go back to Unreal, go to pickups, actors, and then pickups, and drop a BP checkpoint. And all this will do is save the location on the track. So let's make sure that we have the ability to save the checkpoint right before. Let's make it right before the mine. So actually, let's move the mines a little bit more here. And guys, sorry, I am doing this on the fly. Let's make this a little bit closer. Just trying to to get the best setup to show what I mean here. Okay, so the player can come and grab the checkpoint just before the mines, and let's go ahead and save. And what happens is, if you click play here, you'll go around, get your checkpoint. As soon as you go through, you'll see a little message saying checkpoint saved. All right, so let's go ahead, and the reason for that is because I want to make sure that the player dies. So let's add a few more mines here, just so we can purposely test the player death. Okay, so I'm just gonna boost here. Whoops, sorry about that. I was testing something earlier. So let's make sure, I'm gonna change this to crash. This was the original damage type. I had to do a little cut there for, had to take a little break, but this is how it should be. Your damage should be on crash. So let's go ahead and test this again. I'm going to speed through this, grab the checkpoint, and eventually now the player dies because it keeps taking damage. And you can see the ship going there, and then whoops, you can see that we spawned we keep dying here. You see that we spawned right there on the checkpoint. So we're going through the entire loop here. There we go. So all right, let's grab the checkpoint, move it a little bit more here. Okay, so all right, so we can take a bunch of damage. We know that we can die and respawn here, but what about some pickups? I wanted to show that we can add some pickups. So we're gonna keep it simple because I can see the video is getting long now, and we're gonna add a health pickup. And if you do get hit, let's make sure that this is inside the track. That is outside, so let's put it here. If the player gets hit, he can come here and grab this health pickup. Let's put it a little bit closer here. And maybe let's put another one here and here. So now, even if the player gets damaged, you can come here, grab the health pickup. There we go. Okay, cool. So I think this is probably a good stopping point, and of course we want to test that you can take damage, that your health goes down, that you can take points, death and respawn. We didn't look at points, so let's quickly go ahead and do that. And we're gonna do that just by using BP points pickup. Simple enough. So this is a pickup that just gives you points, right? And if you get 100 points, you'll get an extra life. So the only thing that I'll share right now is that you can specify how many points the pickup gives you, which is 25 points. You can specify sound, and then whether it sticks to the player, etc. So we're going to leave all that as is. We're going to click play, and notice on the top left that as soon as I grab it, it says hits 25. Okay, cool. So, oops, I missed it. There we go. And you can see the shield will regenerate just a few seconds of not getting hit. The health does not regenerate, but that is by design. And then as soon as I exit the track here, you'll see that I go from track mode into now all range mode, and now I can go pretty much anywhere I want. Cool. All right, so in this video, again, just as a recap, we started from scratch. We created the brand new level. We laid down a simple track. I showed you how to attach a player to the track. We looked at the obstacles blueprint, and we used a simple cube, stretched that out, and we were able to make obstacles rotate or move. We've added mines. We've added a simple checkpoint that will basically respawn you if you die on that location. We added a simple pickup, which in this case gives you health. And we put another one that gives you points. And we tested out that we can take damage. We can increase our health by getting the pickup. We can increase our points by using the other pickup. We can die, and if we die, we actually respawn. So, cool. So we're going to wrap it up in this video. If you have any questions, if something was unclear as you're following the steps, please leave a comment below, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.